Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Emma's Hip Hop Managers Meetup number 1. My name is Michelle Ronquillo, and I'm an event manager. Emma unites music managers organization across 13 European countries, which represents more than 2,000 managers across Europe. Our mission is to strengthen European managers globally through the Empower program, which encompasses education, advocacy, networking, and research. If you want to know more and stay up to date with the upcoming events, please visit our website, follow us on social media, and join our WhatsApp group. I will put all the links in the chat in a second. After the session, there will be a really small survey that will pop up on another screen, and if you can fill that up, that would be amazing. And today we will have, at the end of the session, at the end of the moderating conversation, there will be time for you to have a Q&A with our guests. And also, the last 20 minutes of today's session, there will be a breakout networking room, and I will let you know when that is happening. I'm going to share now the agenda of the day. We have we are in great company today. The conversation will be moderated by Denise Amory, who is artist manager and also a member of Emma's steering committee. And without further ado, over to you, Denise. Please introduce our lovely guest.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Michelle, and thanks for the introduction. So yeah, I'm Denise, artist manager from Birmingham, UK, and member of the Emma's Hip Hop Core Group. It's a real honour and a pleasure for me, both personally and professionally, to welcome Cookie Pryce from a legendary rap duo, Cookie Crew, award-winning pioneers, and really looking forward to hearing more about her journey. Also, Karen Gabay, award-winning producer and broadcaster, and creator of documentary entitled The First Ladies of Hip Hop. It's still streaming on BBC, by the way. So welcome, Karen and Cookie. Thank you both for joining us. If you could just introduce yourselves, hi, and just say a line or two about who you are.
Hi, I'm Cookie Pryce, formerly from the Cookie Crew, 1980s rap group. I've worked in the music industry for probably coming up to nearly 40 years now, and I've worked in different spaces across marketing, PR, radio, anything. I've put my hand to it, you know, from being an artist to eventually working into the music industry. And it's been a journey, not to say it's had its hurdles, but I like what I do and I do what I do. So I'm now working in the digital space. I'm a director of labor management at The Orchard, and I've been at that company for like 10 years now. So yeah, I'm glad to say that I've actually kind of like done a bit of everything, just kind of like, you know, give it a go. And I'm here today for you guys.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cookie. Karen?
So yes, I'm Karen Gabay. I wear several hats. I am a radio presenter and producer, and have worked on one of the longest running shows, Black Specialist shows in the BBC. That's just come to an end, but I'm still broadcasting and presenting features for Black Specialist programmes across the UK. I've worked in the network radio stations for the BBC and KISS FM. I'm also a TV producer working in specialist documentaries in terms of music and history and pop culture. They include Black Legends of America on Public Enemy and Prince and Janet Jackson, and most recently First Ladies of Hip Hop. And the main role that I do in television now, as well as produce content, is I talent produce. So I produce the faces that you see on screen and sometimes like behind the camera. And so I'm quite passionate about that. And in radio, I work across all networks and still an old school tastemaker in terms of pushing emerging talent onto radio and helping to establish their careers. So anyone from, it's been Destiny's Child to Amy Winehouse to now like Say She, who are the prominent girl group of today, female group. And so I do that. And I've also kind of diversified into the world of podcasts and also archiving the history now. So I'm on the British Pop Archive editorial board and on several boards, just in order to kind of keep the legacy going in terms of music and telling the stories of those behind the scenes, including managers.
Fantastic. We've got a wealth of knowledge and experience today, so we're really honoured. I thought we'd start with a little icebreaker question, sort of like a two-part question. So for each of you, sort of what is hip hop to you, And if you opened a hip hop school tomorrow, what subjects would be on the curriculum?
Wow, what is hip hop? I mean, hip hop to me is my life, and you know, those on this call, some may know, but I live and breathe it. I think I'm thankful for everything that it's done for me, for my career, and just life in general. I think hip hop has also been the foundation for many things, you know, of what the music industry looks like now across all genres. You know, look how the space has changed, where at one point radio didn't want to touch hip hop or rap music. It was called a fad, it wasn't respected. And now all of a sudden, you know, it's everywhere. TV ads, everybody wants a piece of the pie. And it's just nice to see how hip hop has evolved from what it was, from, you know, the era that I came from, the era that I grew up in, the music that we were listening to. So to have the joy of having those different, you know, parts of my journey of experience, what hip hop is, and still fully immersed in it, but it is a different sound, it's a different vibe, different energy. But it's great to see how it's evolved. And if there was a school, a college, a university, or you know, if it was on the curriculum, I'd definitely be the vice principal for that. But you know, everything needs to be on the curriculum. You know, whether it's turntablism, graffiti art, MCing, DJing, breakdancing, popping. I think a bit of everything, but also there should be part of the curriculum should be the history, like the deep history of what hip hop is, the foundation, and what it means to people. You know, to a lot of people, just music, right? Something they're into. But to people like myself, it's literally a lifestyle, and it's a culture, and it's something that I live by. I will live and die by it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Karen, how about yourself?
To me, hip hop is a culture that has come out of children who pioneered do-it-yourself culture. That's kind of how I see it. Every time I speak to someone who is part of the hip hop culture, they've all had a genius way of creating something unique and special that has laid down the foundations or keeps it moving into being something that everybody wants to be part of. It's really interesting how many people just want a slice of that culture, but the people who made it generally, not exclusively, but generally, you know, came out of lifestyles that were quite restricted in terms of what they're able to do, and they just went beyond and made something great out of it. So that's what it means to me, and it is something that is the fabric of our lives, is intertwined in our lives, really, in so many ways. I was, you know, at a medical appointment the other day and said hip hop, and then, you know, they just all went off down another tangent, and that's just what the magic of hip hop is. In terms of a hip hop school, I agree with Cookies. I think there are so many elements to the culture that are overlooked, and I think that studying all elements of the pillars, you know, from, you know, graffiti to DJing to turntablism, but also I think a course that should be on there is about the creativity. It's kind of so that people really understand what it was, because now we're in they call it the microwave generation or whatever, the social media generation. But I think that it'd be great for people to learn that it's something that AI won't be able to create, and to learn about those elements of creativity and have that hip hop creativity on there, because it does stand aside from other forms of music, I think, or culture. That's what I feel. And also, to be really honest, hip hop is one of the last bastions of people being honest about what the true pitfalls were. And so to talk about the true pitfalls so that people could really learn some real life lessons, I think, that can come out of hip hop, as well as some great winning lessons as well. So that's what I'd like to see incorporated.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about this curriculum all day, couldn't we? There's just so much that could be packed full, and it could be undergraduate, postgraduate, everything.
There are some, though, you know, I'm sure you know that, you know, like there are some, you know, Spinderella's got a DJing school.
Okay.
And there are women in LA who've set up a whole school, and I think Shah Rock's like as well, isn't she? She's leading one of the major courses as well in the States. So they are getting there. It just needs to come across the water.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it will definitely come across the water. And I think with us still being a part of the music and still being present, to me, that's all part of the education, to show that there is longevity. You can have a career You don't have to be upfront. You don't have to be, you know, an artist. There's things behind the scene that I think a generation needs to think about. You know, what areas of the business they can go into. Everybody wants to be a rapper or a performer in some capacity, but there's so many other business elements to the culture itself. And you know, like I said, everybody wants a piece of the pie. There's always something. I'm getting approached to speak on panels. To, you know, I feel like I'm doing more work now than I did back then, which is kind of a blessing, because that keeps my blood red. And also it affirms to me that I am dedicated to the culture. You know, outside of music, I'm dedicated to the culture.
Yeah, lovely. I mean, obviously the celebrating 50 years of hip hop has brought fresh energy, obviously, to the genre as well. So just perhaps Karen, to this question. So as someone deeply involved in the music industry through radio and TV, what reflections on the impact of hip hop over the past 50 years? You know, what are your reflections, and what milestones stand out to you the most?
What I think is really interesting with hip hop more than any other genre, maybe apart from neo soul, which is a small period of time, I'm not a fan of that term, but is that the artists that I've interviewed in hip hop have all stayed the course, mainly more so than in any other genre. You know, there's less, there's more longevity because of their ability to perform, to do merchandise, to always mean something to another generation coming up. So, you know, people who I've interviewed way back when re-emerge, whether it's in front of the mic or as producers. You know, example, Ali Rashid Muhammad of, you know, Tribe Called Quest turns up in Lucy Pearl another time along the way, and now is with Adrian Young doing compositions and soundtracks, and has used the limitations of hip hop to expand the horizons of hip hop. You know, so those artists really show me that's how creative they are, but they've stood the test of time. You know, if you look at even the last 2 months, you know, Farside, who I interviewed back in the day, that they're on tour. Lords of the Underground are on tour. Pete Rock's, you know, on tour. So, you know, a lot of those artists are still around. The one thing that is very clear, though, is that women still haven't been given their due or their respect on billings in the way that they were so much in the early days. When you look back in the early days, there's a real balance. You speak to hip hop heads, they will have seen female artists performing and headlining on bills, and you don't necessarily see that anymore. That's not maintained, and the hip hop women are out of touch. It may not seem that, but they are out of touch or out of reach. You know, those conversations aren't there. They're not able to, they don't interact in that same way. So there's a real division in where are the women being given the space. You know, there's a big summit in the next few days, but again, that's a summit that's a lot of those women have said they would like to tour, but they've not been given the opportunity. And there's British artists who were only given the opportunity like in 1989, 1990, and don't feel that there's a space for them, even though the fan base is there. That's the one observation I've noticed.
Yeah, we've got a question about that, about women's role in hip hop a little bit later on. And any comments from yourself, Cookie, on that? Just out of interest.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about women not getting their dues, or, you know, getting the spotlight that male MCs and rappers and just artists in general get, it's kind of like, it's been an age-old thing. And I think we've been good at, you know, to a certain degree, overcoming it and just always being there, being present, not disappearing. You know, and with Hip Hop 50, you realize, to me, it's like you realize how many female rappers were around at any given time. There was a lot of us. There was a lot, and there's a lot now. It's just that thing of, why do we have to, why is the question that's like, you know, you're good for a female, or how do you feel working in a male-dominated industry? It's like, it is what it is. And I think as a female, you just got to be strong and push on. You do it because you want to do it, you know, push everything aside. And I think that's how, you know, we've managed to survive, and how I've managed to survive within the music industry is, I don't really give a fuck. You know, we've always had that, oh, what's it like being female rappers in a male-dominated? And you look around, you're just saying, I'm just here for the culture. You know, as long as we've been embraced in a certain way and we carry ourselves in a certain way. But there's a whole lot of us out there, you know, old, new, future MCs are coming through, and they're fierce. A lot of them are very fierce. And I think also what we need to focus on or work on is actually working together and collaborating together. So
Yeah.
there's always going to be that divide in the scene, in any genre. There's always going to be a divide. So it is working together. Things aren't going to happen overnight, may not happen in my lifetime, but the fact is we can still have these conversations about hip hop and where women stand and what we look like and how we're progressing or how we're not progressing. I think it's always going to be a conversation. If we stop talking about it, then it will just disappear. So it's good that we have these problems.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, growing up through hip hop myself and, you know, watching artists like yourselves develop and just being truly inspired, you know, just a question for yourself now. So Cookie, you know, legendary figure in hip hop history, saluted and recognised in the UK, US and beyond. And I'm a long time fan. And actually had a bit of a nostalgic week. We appreciating your music. We're born this way, the fade to black, you know, come and get some, secret of success, word to the conscious. I was literally just revisiting some of your music and, you know, totally salute. So, can you share some of your personal insights into how hip hop has evolved since its inception? You've touched on some of those things, but you know, how hip hop has evolved since its inception, and what changes have been most significant to you as an artist?
Well, I think with any genre, but quite significant with hip hop is watching it evolve and being a part of it from the early days, not really knowing what the future was going to look like. I mean, I would have never dreamt that there are now UK hip hop artists, rap artists, or whatever, grime artists that are quintessentially British.
Mm-hmm.
They're making their own music. They don't need to look to Europe or to the US, more to the point, because that was always our focus point. It's like, got to get to the US. Luckily, we had that success. We had the opportunity, but it has to evolve. If it didn't evolve, then it would have died. You know, there were certain paths that hip hop took where weren't too sure about it, didn't like the sound, didn't like the feeling of it. You know, you get to a certain age, you're not really going out to those clubs, you're not hanging out, you're not listening to that DJ. So things move on, and so do we. Like, you have to move on, and watching it grow and evolve, and also being okay with taking a step back and not acting like I know everything. I'm not up in the mix of every artist that's going in the UK, because I don't feel like I need to be. And I watch it with respect and love, because they've got it. You know, they're owning their own intellectual property. They're running businesses. They're managers. They're artists in their own right, and they're doing business things, and they're traveling globally. So it's you know, seeing the growth of how, particularly in the UK, it's been phenomenal, and it can only get better. We just got to make sure that it's managed and it's nurtured and it's looked after, and also that we retain ownership of it. Ownership of the culture, the brand, the IP, everything that surrounds it, because everything can easily get lost, and there's certain elements of the culture or the music that has got a little bit lost, but that could be just my personal opinion. But you know, there's room for change. We have to change. You know, we don't have horse and carriage anymore. We have electric cars. So, you know, and I'm happy to embrace it. I'm also happy to take a step back to watch it and enjoy it and be there as, you know, as advisory consultant and just being, you know, a voice of reason. And anyone can come and talk to me about anything to do with music, the scene, my career, giving them advice on, you know, what they should do. And it's just being positive, just making sure everything's done in a positive light.
Absolutely. And thank you. That knowledge is so key, that knowledge of past as well. So yeah. Any comments from yourself, Karen? Anything you want to say about that? So how hip hop's evolved, how it's evolved since inception?
You know, I concur with what Cookie said. The one thing is that hip hop in the UK has remained very British. Well, it's remained, because it went that way and it could have gone back. And many of the artists aren't concerned about crossing over. The Americans aren't really into the very British form of hip hop or grime or rap. But what is great is that the artists don't really care. And they've got markets. They really are aware of the markets that they've got elsewhere. And so that has kept their authenticity, you know, and as Cookie said, they have done amazing things in establishing themselves as Black British business owners as well. And you know, in lots of ways, from Swiss doing Black Pound Day, you know, to all of those things. And you know, I interviewed, you know, Stormzy Bookwinner the other week. You know, it's incredible that he's done something that's run for 5 years, and he's actually inputting back into society. So, you know, and it's appealing to hip hop fans. The guy who won is a hip hop fan, you know what I mean? And it made him realize that he could, you know, he could write and he could get a book published. So I think it's been an asset that, you know, that it's remained very UK. And because it also, you know, when I in the States, the Americans do admire that as well. You know, they do admire that. And I think that some of hip hop has gone very formulaic, but you can't really accuse the Brits of doing that. And also what's been interesting is now is they do, I think the artists do really interesting collaborations. You know, if you look at the Soul Experience, which was a collaboration with, you know, hip hop and reggae artists as well, and having that element of classical, it shows it's quintessentially British, but also kind of like very powerful. So yeah, I do think it needs to be looked after, and I just do think that for me that working in broadcast, I think it's really useful and really helpful if artists do though think about who they're appealing to, not just when they're on stage, because I think that there's more than one generation who were motivated to do great things by the original hip hop artists, and you can't ever underestimate that. And I think that that's the only side of it that you know is missing, is slightly missing. You know, it's, you know, people wanted to look like Salt and Pepper and wanted to, you know, and could admire, you know, the Cookie Crew keeping their natural look, all of those things. There was lots of things for people to admire and to latch onto and to learn from lyrically and to be educated by. And I just think that that's the one element that some of the present generation need to reflect on a little bit.
I think what's important, what's amazing is that everything is documented now, right? Because we're in a digital age. You know, back in our times, you had to wait for everything, but the anticipation was exciting because we didn't know any different. Now everything's like instant gratification, but the fact that everything is documented, I mean, it's only now that our 2 albums are available on the digital platforms. Prior to that, everyone's asking, "Where's your music? How come we can't access it?" And I'm like, you know, I wasn't bothered. And also I just saw it as a chore. I was like, how do we get it there? Blah, blah, blah. But anyway, it's there now. Things are happening. There's going to be a physical box set of the Cookie Crew albums and everything. So there's exciting things happening. And I'm glad it's happening because now the fans can have access to it. So now everything's documented, just and having an archive and artifacts of things from yesteryear. And I just love going through my stuff and finding handwritten lyrics and you know, photographs and things from that time. It's like, how did we do this and survive without digital? But we did. But the fact that everyone has access to anything at any given time is phenomenal.
No, that's fantastic. It brings on quite nicely to the next question I had. So, I mean, we'll continue to witness hip hop evolve, and you've both witnessed the journey firsthand. And we talked about the fact that, you know, there's so many core elements that people kind of, I think, forget. You know, the hip hop is a culture, it's a movement, it's a vibe. You know, it's something that's been nurtured over time. It's got soul, it's got spirit. You know, it's more than just the rap music. What do you believe are the key factors, though, that has contributed to the longevity of hip hop and its continued relevance? If there's any sort of key factors you can identify that have contributed to the longevity.
Because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Right? It gives back and it educates. It's welcoming. You know, it's a genre that lets people in. We freely let people in, whether it gets exploited or not. It's a lifestyle. It's I don't know. It's just a feeling. It's kind of like hard to explain, but like I said, I would always say it's beyond the music. Everything we did, and when I think about the timelines of what we did, was a very short space in time, but we made an impact compared to what hip hop looks like now and how it's consistently growing. Month on month it's growing, but we was a blip, a tiny blip that was the foundation of what hip hop was in the UK. So it's just I don't know, it's just like a seed that grows many things, you know.
Peppered with dance and fashion and
everything. It was hated, it was discarded, it was, you know, put to one side as just, what is this music? But you know, it was a fear of something being great.
I mean, I think what's helped it survive is, you know, in the reality it was it was collaborative without people realizing it was collaborative, wasn't it? You know, people were basing it on, you know, records that were in their siblings' collections, their parents' collections. And what I do think has allowed it to survive is that there was a period of time where the artists that those music were being used didn't stop it and haven't stamped down on it. And you know, and that just shows, you know, and that's because, you know, some of them admit they didn't think it was going to go anywhere, but the fact that it had that, it's always got that nostalgia feeling to it. Because of that, because of what it's used, it's always got that element of it, and so it keeps more than one music alive. And I think that that's what its appeal of, because that's its appeal, because there's elements of rock, there's elements of salsa, there's all these elements in them. It's in a way that people don't know why they're using it. And somebody who Cookie and I both know is kind of one of the key elements of hip hop was Vivian Scott Chew, and she said because the ones that hit are always quite tribal. They've got this element to them that kicks in, and you don't really understand why it's kicking in and why you love it. But I think it's got all those elements, and I think that's why it survived. And I think, you know, I do think that there are certain musicians around, and I'll say, you know, Chic and Shalimar and people like that that did not stop it. You know, they wanted their dues, but they did not say no in the way that, you know, other musicians would have pulled the plug and said, that's it, it's done. They didn't do that. And I think you cannot underestimate how doing that has let this music survive.
100%. And just picking up on what you said about how music blends styles, and the fact that we know it's also about storytelling, it inspires artists across genres. You know, you've got pop rap now, you've got trap, you've got, you know, grime, all these different things that have been inspired by hip hop. But as a radio host, Karen, sort of, how do you see hip hop influencing contemporary music trends? I mean, you might have touched on it already, but how do you see hip hop influencing contemporary music trends, and how it shaped the music industry as a whole? How do you say it's shaped the music industry as a whole?
I think it helps artists in terms of storytelling, because hip hop records are great stories, you know, often great stories are great at using hooks, you know, and it just reminds, like, you know, when a new artist discovers it, then that's what captures them as well. It's got that art to it, and so people realize it's got to be an art, because then they'll look up and see how old the record is, you know, sometimes, and they'll see that. One thing that I found more in recent times was and is there are a large number of music lovers who consider themselves quite open-minded, but actually weren't open-minded to hip hop. And when they heard music again that had that nostalgic look, they are more open to kind of like reinvestigating it. And they're often sometimes the people that you see at concerts and at gigs, you know, or like kind of like supporting the element, because it has got that appeal. I think the only thing that's really, I mean, it's so mainstream now, isn't it? You would never think there's such a long time where you never would think that hip hop was the pop music, which is the pop music now, isn't it? But I think and I say this to new artists coming up as well, if clean edits were done of all of those hip hop albums, then I don't think anyone would have a look in, because, you know, there's just a large swathe of that music that is so popular that actually, you know, I'll give an example. It's kind of like going off on a steer, but I always think, oh, I wish they'd do a clean version of It Was a Good Day by Ice Cube.
Okay.
It's just, you know what I mean? Because it's just one of those, for so many reasons, that music could be played like mainstream. And there was, for such a long time, we played it and there was no issue around it. But times have changed, and that's the only thing. There's an element from the golden age that then moved on with, like California Love and stuff like that. That if there were, you know, that's not necessarily needed a clean version, but if there was clean versions of those, I do think there'd be even more of a resurgence, because they are so, you know, instead of, you know, people, what people always, you know, there are some records that are rinsed now on daytime radio, and you think, oh my God, I'm going to hear that song again from 1981. I don't know, one that I hate, Dexy's Midnight Runners, Come On Eileen. Do you know what I mean? But I think if you had, if they rethought that process, that it would be interesting how the radio landscape would work in the times of now. You know, think about why I'm saying it is what can be played on the radio is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking.
Yeah, I hear you. And just going back to Cookie, actually, because I was hooked up, I'm listening to your music again, and it took me back. And then, like Karen saying, some of those songs are timeless. But I also noticed as well, even more deeply, they're so full of powerful messages like social awareness, love, peace. You know, the messages in your songs was just so powerful. So what? Sort of thinking about the current state of hip hop culture, then, given what we said about lyrical content and what Karen just said, what are your thoughts on the current state of the hip hop culture? This is a 3-part question, actually. So, your thoughts on the current state of hip hop culture, how you see it evolving in the future, and particularly in terms of its impact on society and popular culture. Sort of, where do you see
the current state of hip hop? Also, we need to also acknowledge that there's hip hop and there's rap.
Yeah,
I suppose it's a
please
current state
do.
of
Thank
rap.
you.
Yeah, because hip hop to me, that's a different
Yeah.
space, to sit in a different space. Rap to me is just a form of expression. So what you use it as a form of expression. So however you want to use it, whether you're using profanity, whether you're spreading a message, whether it's happy rap, whether it's something educational, I think everyone should have the freedom to do and say what they want to do. It may not get airplay for whatever reason, but you have to remember that we can't keep censoring people and editing, because that's all a part of the growth of why we exist. It was for the people. It was the people that were undermined, that didn't have anything. What did they do? They rapped, right? So they used it as a form of expression. So in the current state of it now, it is what it is. It's evolving. It's reflecting the times, as far as I'm aware. And sometimes when I listen back to some of our lyrics, which I do occasionally, I'm fascinated by some of the lyrical content, some of the things we were saying, which was quite ahead of our time without digital access. So I think we're quite conscious and quite sensible. We were very aware of ourselves and how we presented ourselves, particularly for women in the music industry. We want to make sure that we were saying and doing the right thing. Yes, we'll have our happy raps where they're born this ways and they got to keep on, where it's just you're just having fun. But there were certain lyrics on there. It's like, this is what was happening in the world. This is what was happening in the UK, and we were able to put pen to paper. So listening back, I was a little bit quite fascinated that I was listening to it, and I was sending a message to Susan saying, our albums, they're quite dope, actually. For their time, maybe at the time we didn't see it as that, and maybe the masses and the public didn't see it as that. But with hindsight and what's happening now, some of our stuff is very, 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 very current. And it's just, rap is what it is. You can't contain it. You have to let it do what it has to do, because to me, it's freedom of speech, and it's a form of expression, more importantly.
Absolutely. I mean, everything you said was what I was thinking when I was listening. I was thinking this music. My son, the artist I work with, he's about lyrical consciousness and lyrical lyrics and music that's meaningful. And when I listened to your music, I was like, there's everything in there. You can dance to it. It's going to make you think.
And it was being conscious without making an effort to be conscious. We were just in that moment. So it's how we were feeling at the time.
Now, someone just asked a question. Sorry, someone just asked a question and saying, in our music awards in Estonia, they group hip hop and rap under one category, and almost all of them have gone to rap artists. I'm super emotional about it. How do you feel about that?
That's interesting.
I'm going to delve into that question. We've really got a couple of we can go into that.
I'm very. Oh, who's that? Somebody speaking.
This is Sir Lady.
Hi.
Hey, how you guys doing? I was just chiming in, just seeing, and I see it's a very diverse crowd, very diverse market here. But I'm in the States, and I don't know. It seems to me like, I guess most of you guys are outside the States or just representing other areas. So
UK.
Okay, mostly UK.
No, I think it's a mixture of Europe, but I'm from the UK. Karen's in the UK.
Okay.
Denise is in the UK. Some of our guests, who hopefully will hear some of their voices, they're from different parts of Europe.
Okay, because what I was getting from it is how you guys were touching on like hip hop and then rap and saying it like a separation. But here in the States, hip hop is what it is. In the States, it's a hip hop, and rap is like the sub genre of hip hop. Something that kind of spawned out from it. But I'm not gonna say we don't differentiated, but on a small spectrum, we do like, you know, as far as like the hardcore hip hop, which would be gangster rap. Then you have like drill and all these other forms and variations that have spawned now with the new generation. So when I'm looking at a comment that such as that, I'm thinking just from my standpoint, and then even talking about the radio, like it's not censored over here. Like you'll hear some of the most rugged, raw, whatever on the radio. Like how did that actually get played? It's getting played, and it's been that way for a very long time. Then you have the other stations that do have the more conscious or dedicated hip hop, like, you know, the more African Bambaataa, the Most Defs, or the Kendricks, the K Dots, and stuff like that. And we kind of still don't differentiate it though. It's just all one big subgenre, and everybody's kind of competing against each other, if that makes sense. Then
that makes perfect sense. I totally understand what you're saying about separation of hip hop and rap. I think that's kind of like more like a personal, for me, it's like a personal thing because I kind of like grew up in the hip hop culture in the UK, which was very, very important to us. And rap is an element of hip hop. And because we're living that lifestyle where we made sure we protected the culture, and it was in the UK, you know, you got London, you got Manchester, Birmingham, Wolverhampton, there's always different cities where they had their little pockets of hip hop. And within hip hop, they had their rappers, their break dancers, their graffiti artists. But hip hop as a whole, I see it as a, I know it's like my church. So I think that's why I was kind of like, that's why I was kind of like separate the two. Yeah, exactly.
Called an amalgamate, a mixing. And I think that overseas, like you guys in London and the UK and all these other places outside the United States, you guys have a deeper appreciation for the culture. We kind of lost the for the culture. Wow. It's money driven here. I can be blunt. It's money driven. Right. So the culture, if you still respect it, that's the graffiti, the breakdance, and the elements, you know, the lyricism, all those aspects before the fashion came in, before the money came in, before the advertisements and big companies came in. It was just the respect for the culture. And I think you guys have a deeper respect that not saying we forget about it, but I think we lost that respect.
Yeah.
In a sense.
I mean, the Brits are nerds, and I think, you know, if you cover Europe, so that's the other thing with any kind of genre as well. They're quite quite nerdy, aren't we? Over a kind of music, we go deep. And one thing to say is, you know, you touched about in America, it's not censored. I'm not for censorship, but the other side of it is we have been censored, and sometimes, as in the genre, has been slow to recognize that, because of course, you know, you can, and you don't think about when you're creating a record, you don't think about what you're putting into it. You've got to create from the heart. But the other side is the landscape's changed, and before we know it's been shut down, so to speak. And I'm kind of I don't want artists to be shut down. An example is Wanda, who I introduced Cookie to late last year, and I was saying to her saying to the audience that we were talking at, do radio edits, do your own, but do radio edits. She's done that, and she's now gone clear across all radio, and it's kind of like being life-changing for her. And she's still, what's hilarious, she's got like a talisman, which is Pussy Power, which of course none of them ever want to say when they go on the radio, so they don't want to say that. She doesn't detract from that, but there's now an obstacle in terms of UK airplay, in that there's so much of it that they won't play. And I'm all for not gatekeeping by saying, you know, do your own thing, right, whatever you do. But we don't have that freedom because we've got a body, and it doesn't matter. I think even people think on Pirate you can play what you want. Well, not when they're ready to shut you down for also playing parent advisory. So we've got that's a different system, which is like the, you know, horses bolted, and people weren't quick enough to even say there's certain things you should allow. You know, I don't even think, you know what I'd realised after years in broadcasting, that you weren't even supposed to play a record that said arse, as we say. I never knew that. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, so there's lots of levels of censorship that have like come in, and I call that just as that. But I think as managers, people have got to be aware as why I'm raising it, because it's a bit of a culture war. You know, even though hip hop is the number one and it is the $1 billion industry, particularly in the States, there is a culture war against it as well. And we don't want a whole set of people to be locked out. There's, you know, in the 80s eras, everyone, you could be conscious, You could be gangster, you could be everything, and it didn't affect your career. There was room. There isn't room for that now. There's only room generally in radio for a very limited set of hip hop or rap artists. And I think that's where I'm coming from on that. It's not to censor, but we're being censored, but don't let them keep us out for that reason.
It's just good to have different versions, like having different remixes to accommodate different DJs. It's just making sure you're having your assets in order, just in case. And somebody asked about French hip hop. I love French hip hop. One of my favorite groups from back in the day was a group called Science Super Crew. That's all I have to say.
MC Solar.
And MC Solar as well, of course. Yeah.
Cool. Any more questions or comments? And how are we doing for time, Michelle?
Yes, I think Michael had his hand up.
I was the one from Estonia that has the emotional reaction for hip hop being grouped together with rap. And I think, I mean, first of all, I'm from a village in terms of how many people we have living in Estonia. That's 1.3 million. So, you know, for us, it's a, you know, if it's a rap act, he's got hyper beats. As long as he raps on it, he can be in that category. And then you got acts who, you know, maybe even if they don't, you know, take the culture aspect, you know, they're not, you know, hanging out with b-boys and graffiti artists, but at the same time they still live the culture in that sense that they put thought into their album, what they're saying, what they have to say, instead of, you know, ass is a word. So let's say you know, and then, you know, they always get pushed to the side because it's a, you know, it's a popularity contest. You know, if you got a greater hook in the song that doesn't tell you anything, then, you know, obviously it's going to win. So in what my statement on that was, I think those two just should be separated in some form in order for the beauty of hip hop to come out as well.
That's a really lovely comment.
Yeah, and you said the beauty of hip hop, and that's the thing. What I always encourage people that want to be part of the culture, want to be artists. They all want to get streams, get likes, and that. But you've got to make music because you like it from here, and that the music is good. You know, fuck whether you're going to get a blue tick or a billion streams. Like, what are you in it for? And that's why the cultural side of it and the lifestyle is, to me, over anything, is more important.
Yeah, but patting yourself on the back all the time, you need some recognition from time to time.
Oh yeah, there's that.
You know?
There's that. But from within, you've got to understand why you're in it. You know, some people get disappointed because they don't make money out of it, or can't make a living. But also the industry is so saturated. I mean, even from our days back in the 80s and going into the early 90s, we were fighting for space, but we were lucky enough to break through and get a bit of commercial success. And we spent time in the US working with US producers and producers that we wanted to work with. But also being very, we knew what we wanted, and nobody ever told us we got to make music in a certain way. You know, we were signed based on a record that we had out called Rock the House, which ended up being the first hip house record in the UK. We hated that record because it was what I always call an accidental hit. It was something that we wrote a rap for. The producers that put this track together, they remixed it and mixed it until it turned into house music. And it was that period when house music in the UK was kind of like bubbling and things were happening in the clubs. And it just morphed into this massive hit where it was in the charts and radio stations were playing it, and promoters used to get angry because we didn't have it in our set list when we went to do gigs because the fans bought tickets based on this record that we hated. But we stood by that. We could have probably made more money, got more gigs, and had a longer recording career if we had complied. But we were so dedicated to the culture and our upbringing. And I guess it's a generational thing because, you know, our parents came from the West Indies. So we were raised on that. And we just wanted to just be a part of hanging out with the breakers, with, you know, going to the hip hop jams and getting on a flight to New York to go and buy our gear to come back and listening to mixtapes and just, you know, all of that. So it all depends on what you're in it for. I think, you know, everyone's an individual. There's no right or wrong way.
Yeah. No, thanks for those contributions. Really beautiful to hear that. Just think about time, because I know we're going to go to breakout rooms. So I thought maybe we'd finish with a question about future opportunities and challenges. So to both yourselves, Karen and Cookie, looking ahead to the future, so what opportunities and challenges do you anticipate for hip hop, the culture, I guess, as well as rap? Maybe we look at both as it continues to evolve. And how can music managers adapt and support artists in navigating these challenges?
I think managers need to be in tune with their talent, and be as honest with their talent and work together and have a roadmap to what you want to achieve and manage your expectations. There's so many different things that you should expect of a manager. I work in an industry where I see managers and I'm like, are you a manager or the artist, or is this a friend? This is a relative? What are you doing? And they're in it for the wrong reason. So there is a business element to it, and I think it's all about knowing your business and what you want for your talent, and is your talent making the right music for the consumers. It's give and take, and it's working together, and it's figuring it out. And it's, if you're going to be a manager, be a good manager. There's no point being a shit manager. It just doesn't, it's not great.
What were the good things about how you were managed? What do you think was about your management?
We were very lucky. We had these 3 women in the end, and the first lady that managed us, her name was Jean Davenport, and she used to run the Shaw Theatre in London. She also used to run the Town and Country Club. So she was the one that was responsible for bringing over all the acts that you would have seen at what was it called, Town and Country Club back in the day. It would have been Jean. Anything at the Shaw Theatre, she was the one that put on the Rap Attack show, where she had us, African Barter, Lisa Lee, EACEA, Brim the Graffiti Artist came over, Jazzy Joyce came over. And we've done this I think we've done about 2 weeks of this show, doing matinees for the kids, shows in the evenings. And she wasn't someone that was in the music industry. And we just loved the way she operated and loved the way she looked after this culture that was emerging. And we just said to her, Jean, we want you to manage us. And she's from up north. It's like, oh, I don't know. It's not what she does. But she literally gave up her job, turned her flat into our office. She used a car for us to go and do PAs around the UK. And it just happened. And it was her and her sister-in-law, Mary. Both of them have passed on now. They're the ones that walked us through all the labels. Like, we went to every meeting. They negotiated every deal. And they weren't record company people. They're 2 white women, 2 middle-class white women. But they didn't give a shit, because they'd walk into a male-dominated environment, and all they did was care about us. They wanted the best for us, and they got the best for us. Publishing deal, recording contract, we had the right agents, and everything was just nice. So when I hear stories of people having bad luck, dodgy managers, getting ripped off, signing recording contract for £1, it's like, how does that happen? What is going on? So, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be sitting here today. They would make us check every check stub. If they wrote a check to pay for something, they said, girls, can you just check what we're writing? It's like, we trust you. And it was all analog. Everything was handwritten. Everything was done analog. So we were very lucky. And I'm sure managers like that do exist in the ecosystem. But in terms of hip hop talent in the UK, I've heard so many sad stories. But thankfully, our story is not a sad story. And last year, we received a Pioneer Award from the Artists and Managers Music Award. So it was quite nice to be recognised in that capacity. We weren't looking for it. It's like, sure, we'll accept it. Why not? But we worked for it also. We worked for it.
No, thank you for sharing that. So Karen, just as someone from the broadcasting world who interviews managers all the time, artists and managers, I guess, all the time, what do you think managers need to do to help artists navigate the challenges and maybe take advantage of opportunities as well in the hip hop and rap music industry?
I think make sure that your artist is marketed to everyone, not specific radio program or brand. I think I see a lot now that everything's targeted to one particular station or one particular brand, and it might work on the odd occasion, but if you approach doing your small gigs and building up your community that way, and approaching radio stations no matter how small they are, and also not just necessarily based in the country that you live, you're just like widening your horizons, widening your interactions, helping your artist develop in terms of doing interviews, in terms of being able to do a live session when called for, in terms of doing all of those things, and you're widening your customer base. If you only go to one, when the next person comes along, you're kind of out of the mix. You need to build supporters, and you never know, who's listening. And some aspects of broadcast can always claim that they have more people listening or they're more effective, but they've built themselves up that way in a brand to let you know that. So I think so many times, you know, big mistake for me is people saying, can you tell me who to go to? And instead of like, as well as you, is there anyone else to go to? Do you know what I mean? If you think you're always saying that to one person, it's like, well, actually, not everyone kind of cares, you know, I know I'm passionate about it, but it's about like that network. A good model is a friend of mine who now after 2 years has gone clear. One was she tried to speak to the radio stations, but people who could give her advice about how the music sounds. No, not everyone has got that time, but she just asked the question, if people had the time, how's it going to work? Is it going to work for commercial? Does it work best on pirate? And does it work? She do small gigs. You know, she did all of those things, and you know, 2 years on, she's got that strength of base. You know, she's got a wide range of supporters and community, and she's well versed in being able to speak. You know, sometimes you, as a manager, you know, you say to someone, will you do a session? And the manager's going, no, I'm not doing that. And it's like, well, how's anybody going to know what you liked when you're going to perform in a gig? That's them. But the questions I get asked the most on the radio is, how do they sound?
Right.
You know, live, it's like it's a great record because the territory's changing, the audience is changing, the landscape's changing. Where do most bands make their money and artists? Live music and like for merchandise. So there's lots. I'd just say that, you know, widen your focus. You just have a focus, but don't kind of like limit it to one kind of aspect of the industry. I mean, if you can, that's my kind of like take on it. And just in terms of hip hop, the culture's changing in the north. I know it's a little bit in London, the graffiti culture is coming back, and they are working and liaising with artists as well. So it's also look at what the landscape is and you know what's happening in the culture, so to speak, if you're part of that, because that has now been embraced. And you know, I recently did something aside from radio and TV, a massive arts project, and then I was able to bring musicians in to perform against that backdrop. And that's happening. So it's all of those things, you know, looking at how the culture is evolving in relation to your artist as well.
No, some real great takeaways there, some real gems. Thanks both of you for those. So Michelle, what are we gonna do next? What's the plan?
Yes, first of all, thank you so much, Cookie and Karen. This was incredibly useful. I'm sure we can continue for another hour. But I just wanted to thank you so much for your time and for being here. And yeah, I hope we can welcome you back soon. And for the rest of you, we're going to open the breakout rooms in as soon as I finish recording. Please, you're all welcome to stay. And yeah, so thank you so much for everybody who's watching the recording on YouTube. Please join us live. We're having fun. Thank you so much, everybody, and see you soon.